I love how during the election cycle, suddenly everybody's an expert on reality. They're all talking about how you have to be realistic, how this candidate's realistic, that candidate's not realistic, as if the only realistic candidates are these sold-out corporate stooges that the corporate media is peddling. Sure, under the current paradigm, perhaps that is all that's realistic. But does it have to be that way? Could it not be better? Do we have to always have a Hillary Clinton versus a Donald Trump? It doesn't seem like we do. A couple of years ago, there was a huge groundswell for Bernie Sanders. I personally think Bernie Sanders is a fraud and a sellout, has been from the beginning. But there was a huge groundswell of actual grassroots support for him coming from a broad swath of society. Very familiar to me as a Ron Paul supporter in 2012. I saw a similar level of support for Ron Paul, if not even more. There were a lot of people who were all about Ron Paul in 2012. I remember driving through certain towns in Orange County, and you could see a Ron Paul sign in literally every yard. Like you would drive past 100 houses and see 100 Ron Paul signs. And that's a populous area with a lot of people, and he was filling stadiums at the time. But, people say, oh, that's not realistic, Well, what's realistic? Mitt Romney, apparently, or during that election, was realistic. Mitt Romney, the guy has the personality of a dead Undertaker. but people are willing to, claim that he's realistic. Why? Because, he had the backing of the corporate party and the corporate media. We need something other than a corporate solution, because most of our problems are corporations. The economic problems we have, the homeless problems we have in every city, all of them are a direct result of giant corporations squeezing every last penny and hour of everybody's lives out of them, according to the spreadsheet. We've pretty much eliminated small family-owned businesses now in favor of these giant, monolithic mega corporations. And most of the mega corporations don't have very many high salary positions. Most of them are very low salary positions, and, with a high turnover, unskilled laborers, customer service, unskilled customer service positions that any high school student could really take, right, directly out of high school with almost no training. And that's how these corporations are designed. They're designed to have an abundance of low-wage workers so that, there's no possibility of unionizing or improving wages or getting a bigger piece of the corporate pie, because, they could just replace you overnight with a whole new staff of people who make minimum wage, doing unskilled, untrained labor. And as a result, we're seeing the entire economy totally fractured. The GDP and, Wall Street, everything's higher than ever. And yet there's more people homeless now. There's more people starving to death because of medical debt, or the divorce industrial complex, or, a lot of these GIs are coming back from the wars and they're committing suicide because, they're not making enough to make ends meet. They got PTSD and the VA's not helping them. It's, these are problems that aren't going to go away unless we address the root of the problem, which is corporate control. The corporations control the Senate. They control the Congress. They've controlled every president in my lifetime. They control most of the judicial branch, including the Supreme Court. Some of the Supreme Court justices are former Monsanto. A lot of the other federal agencies also are all former corporate people. The head of the FDA is some former corporate person. The head of the FCC is a former Verizon CEO or something. It's just the corruption and collusion between corporations and our government now is almost complete. And as a result, we're seeing a lot of our problems, the systemic problems that we've been having, a lack of access to clean water, not just in Flint, but everywhere. I mean, most of these municipalities don't really have clean water. You know, it's like fluoridated, there's chlorine, some of it's recycled human waste with, you know, leftover medications in it and stuff. I mean, I know that in San Diego, some of the municipal water sources are recycled, you know, water. And there's so much medication in some of those recycled water resources that, you know, that you're actually getting other people's medication in your water. So it's not just Flint, Michigan, you know, it's some of the wealthier communities in the country don't have access to clean water. And we've had the solution for our power issues, for our pollution with fossil fuels. We've had the solution for infinite clean water and infinite electricity since the 60s. And it's called liquid fluoride thorium reactors. These have existed. We had one running since the 60s. The guy who invented the nuclear reactor, Alvin Weinberg, said that except for naval vessels, that the light water reactor is insane compared to the thorium reactors. And he was advocating for getting completely off of light water reactors and switching to thorium reactors. Thorium reactors are walk-away safe, and they can actually take the waste that we've created with all the light water reactors, very dangerous and super highly toxic radioactive waste, and upcycle it into something that's not nearly as dangerous or toxic. And Alvin Weinberg said, you know, we need to get off of these light water reactors. And look at all the disasters we've had on the planet from the light water reactors. Fukushima, Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, San Onofre. I mean, all of these nuclear reactors are light water reactors with, you know, incredible pressurization schemes that are just incredibly dangerous. If they're not being cooled all the time, you know, you could have a meltdown on your hands. That's what happened at Fukushima. That's what happened at Chernobyl. I mean, they're super risky and dangerous, as opposed to the liquid fluoride thorium reactors, which are literally walk-away safe. If you walk away, the reaction stops and they just instantly start cooling down. And they're at room pressure. Now, they're not at room temperature. They're thousands of degrees Celsius they operate at. But they are at room pressure. So if something goes wrong, there's not this giant pressurized explosion that, you know, blows the whole building apart and erupts nuclear waste into, you know, all the communities and environment around it, which is what happened at Chernobyl and Fukushima. So we've had the solution for all of our problems. And the reason that we're not implementing that solution is because there's invested corporate interest in the current system. You know, selling solid uranium fuel is a giant business cycle in a multi-billion-dollar a year industry. And, you know, the liquid fluoride thorium reactors would pretty much obsolete that overnight. It would obsolete our requirements for most fossil fuels, the way we've been mining it for the last 100 years. Would also probably obsolete, you know, most of our reliance on solar and wind as well, although they're, you know, I think solar is always going to have its place because it's a legitimate potential renewable energy source that might be easy and decentralized. What's nice about solar is it's totally decentralized. Now, we could have small modular thorium reactors also and have that be fairly decentralized too, but I think we're so far away from that now. Even talking about it is, you know, makes you sound like a crazy person, but I'm not crazy. What's crazy is doing things the way we've been doing them, continuing to run these light water reactors, continuing to these giant wars of, you know, where we're using robots to murder children in the third world, trying to take their oil resources. You know, it's just, what we're doing now is crazy. And, you know, so don't tell me who's a realistic candidate or who's not a realistic candidate, because I'm tired of hearing it. The realistic candidates are all awful and worthless. They're all corporate lackeys who will do whatever the corporations want, and it's just more of the same. And if you've got kids or you care about the future of our species at all, we need something better. We need somebody better. You know, we don't need Joe Biden. We don't need Hillary Clinton. We don't need, any of these different candidates that either of the corporate parties are putting out for us. They're just going to do the same thing they've always done. More corrupt collusion, more backroom deals, more dirty money, and more pollution, more cancer, more diabetes, more crime, more homelessness, more poverty, more opiate addictions. The business as usual needs to come to an end. And there's a lot of young people now super upset about capitalism, and they really want to go towards socialism. I got a newsflash for you. Socialism is not the answer. It's not a silver bullet that's going to solve anything. It won't solve anything. And a lot of people conflate capitalism with our current system. Our current system is not a capitalist system. We live in a corporate dystopia. This is corporatism. This is not capitalism. There's no way for me to start a business and compete with Walmart or Macy's or Saks Fifth Avenue or Verizon. There's no way that I can start a small business and start competing with Verizon. They will seek out and destroy me by all means necessary. I mean, there's not even a way for products that are free and superior to compete with these corporations. Look at Linux. Most versions of Linux are better in every way than Windows, and yet the entire world is still running on Windows. And Linux is completely free, completely open source, completely decentralized, and superior in every way to Windows, on a technical level, on a security level, on an efficiency level, on a price level because it's free. I mean, literally, there is not one thing about Linux that's not better than Windows. And yet we're still all using Windows because these corporations control everything. They control the media, they control the government, they control the narrative of whatever the media is going to talk about. And I think it's not realistic to assume that we could have a candidate that's not beholden and an employee of the corporations. I think we could have that candidate, and I think that candidate could win. Maybe not with the digital voting machines, which I believe are rigged in Ohio, California, and Florida. Certainly, there's evidence. And I mean, if you win those 3 states, you pretty much win the whole shebang because that's where, 90% of the population lives. We've got solutions to all these problems. It's just a matter of stepping up and implementing the solutions. Please, for our kids, let's not talk about Biden, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump. All of these candidates are worthless. All of them are going to continue to infringe on our inalienable rights, continue to erode our constitutional rights, continue to run up the national debt, and continue to enslave all of us and our children to these giant corporations who don't care about anything but the bottom line of their corporate spreadsheet. It's not even like a conspiracy of malice or evil pretext. It's just the simple fact is they're running everything on a spreadsheet that doesn't account for anything except for the maximum profit. And in some cases, in such a weirdly repeatable and sustainable way, I mean, it's not sustainable, but sustainable for the corporation economically, that they're actually shooting themselves in the foot by sticking with some of these older technologies. They could actually make more money selling the newer, better products to us. But they're not even willing to do that because it's too risky. These corporations are risk averse. They've got to just make that little bit of extra profit for their shareholders. That's the key. And it's really sad. And I don't understand why there's so much inertia and so little hope and so little effort being put forth by anybody in the country to change it and make it better and to demand a candidate who isn't a sellout for corporations. I mean, I understand it to some extent. Most of us are on corporate meds, watching corporate TV all day, going to work at our shitty corporate job, driving our corporate car with our corporate bank loan, maxing out our corporate credit cards. We're in debt not just as individuals and families and as a nation, but like across the entire strata. The states are in debt. The counties are in debt. The cities are in debt. The businesses are in debt. The families are in debt. In debt to who? We can't all be in debt. But yet that's the system that we're in at the moment. And the Federal Reserve just keeps printing more worthless paper money, driving the value of the dollar down every day. We could have some kind of blockchain solution with a finite supply. I don't know if Bitcoin is the answer, but, some kind of Bitcoin 2.0, one of the cryptocurrencies, some other cryptocurrency that doesn't exist now, could and should replace fiat currency. But it's got to have all the best aspects of fiat currency. It has to have privacy. It has to have decentralization. It has to have reliability. It has to have ease of use. It's very easy to use paper money. You show up, somebody hands somebody a 20, they bring you a nice meal. It's a very easy transaction. Until we have cryptocurrency that's as easy as that or easier and doesn't rely on these giant corporate networks. Because make no mistake about it, these corporations do not want crypto. That is a potential disruptor for their current profit scheme. They'd rather stick with Federal Reserve notes and everything we're doing as we're doing it. Because it's easy, there's a proven track record of success, and they can look at the spreadsheet and see that next year they're going to be able to stay in the black with no risk. That's what these corporations are all about. And at this point, they've retarded our progress technologically to such a huge extent that it's really depressing if you're a technologist like I am. It's really depressing to see the kind of cars we're not driving, the kind of phones we're not using, the kind of computers we're not using, the kind of operating systems we're not using, because we've been limited by this corporate corruption. And it's time to fix it. It's time to stop filling our oceans with plastic. It's time to stop having GoFundMes for surgeries. All of these things are solvable technologically. We don't have to rob Peter to pay Paul and engage in socialism or fascism. Or we don't have to do any of those methods, which have been tried to disastrous effect. Whether you're talking about communist China, Nazi Germany, it's been a disaster stepping away from free market capitalism. Look at the disaster we're in now, because now we're in a corporate dystopia. We're not in a free market capitalism. And so we're in a disaster right now in this country. And we could go back to a free market capitalism and slowly begin eliminating and eroding these corporations and the corporate power that they have over our government. But it's going to take a concerted effort by an entire generation of people who are focused and willing to put in hard work and long hours, thankless hard hours. And, I don't see, it doesn't seem like most of the people I know under 70 have the kind of character that it takes to put in that kind of work. It seems like everybody feels like they're entitled to a life of luxury. Everybody wants to be a Instagram celebrity and just get paid for advertising corporate garbage. It's really sad. We should be asking more of ourselves and more of each other.